It's the late 80s and the music scene in the north of England is exploding. A new sound is taking over, one that's built around electronic beats, synthesizers and bass lines that make your heart race. It's the sound of rave and it's changing everything. In the midst of this cultural revolution, a young man in Manchester is living his best life. His name is Stu Allan and he will go on to become one of the most influential DJs, music producers and radio hosts of his generation. In this video we're really stretching our legs as we venture through house, hip-hop, soul, funk, disco, pop and hardcore and take a look at the life and works of Stu Allan. Hi, I'm a different Stu and this is Hardcore History. Every month I take a look at the DJs, MCs and singers of our hardcore past and bring you along with me. This month's a big one and I know a few of you have been waiting for it. Next month's another biggie, so stick around and I'll let you know what's going on with that in a bit. While you wait, you might as well know that that subscribe button loves it when you touch it up, as does the like button, so don't be afraid to give it a smack. I'll let you do that while I get into this. Stu Allan's love for music began at a young age. Born on March 22nd, 1965 in Anglesey, an island off the coast of North Wales, Allan grew up in a musical household. Stu's earliest musical influences came from his parents' record collection. He listened to a wide range of music, including rock, pop and soul. However, it wasn't until he heard the emerging sounds of hip-hop that he realised he wanted to pursue a career in music. This was thanks, in part, to John Peel and his show on BBC Radio 1, as Stu would tune in religiously to listen to the underground sounds that the DJ would play. The most notable track that Peel played on one of his shows, giving Allan's desire to DJ the boost it needed, was The Adventures of Grandmaster Flash. Spurred on by his new passion, a recent redundancy and a spell with a local band on his native Anglesey, in 1982, Stu moved to Manchester in pursuit of a career as a DJ. Sources indicate that Allan's first gig was at a club called The Venue in Manchester in 1983. He was just 18 years old at the time and it was his first opportunity to showcase his DJing skills to an audience. Despite the nerves, he delivered a standout performance that earned him a reputation as a promising young talent. Over the next few years, Allan played at various clubs and venues around Manchester, honing his craft and developing his unique sound. He was heavily influenced by the emerging sound of electronic dance music, particularly drawn to the underground sounds of Chicago house coming across to the UK from America. Stu's big break came in 1987 when he was invited to play at the Hacienda, one of Manchester's most iconic clubs. The Hacienda was at the forefront of the emerging rave scene and Allan's energetic DJing style was the perfect fit for the club's hedonistic atmosphere. From there, Allan's career took off. He became a regular on the rave circuit, playing at some of the biggest and most influential clubs in the UK, including the legendary Warehouse Project in Manchester, the Sunrise Festival in Cornwall, and of course Bowlers in Manchester. Allan's unique sound was a key part of his success. He was known for his ability to blend different genres of music together seamlessly, creating a sound that was both fresh and exciting. He also incorporated elements of hip-hop and electro into his sets, which helped to set him apart from other DJs. Stu Allan's early years were characterised by his love of music and his determination to succeed as a DJ. His early influences and first gigs helped to shape his unique sound and paved the way for his eventual move to radio. By this point, he'd already had his mixes and remixes featured on Manchester's Piccadilly Radio on shows such as those of Timmy Mallett, Chris Evans and Tim Grundy. His reputation as one of the UK's top DJs meant that he was a natural choice to host his own radio show, and an opportunity arose at Manchester's Piccadilly Radio after a regular DJ required 6 weeks holiday cover. At the time, Piccadilly Radio was one of the leading commercial stations in the UK and was known for its innovative programming and commitment to promoting new music. Stu jumped into the booth at the station and began to broadcast. The first track he played on the radio was Love Can't Turn Around by Farley Jackmaster Funk and Jesse Saunders. Immediately after the show, station bosses cornered Stu to ask why he was playing that type of music. Taking the attitude of, this is what I'm playing because I'm right, Stu explained that this is what he believed people wanted to hear after seeing them go wild on the dance floors to the sounds of underground Chicago house music at his gigs. They let the ratings decide and, well, they skyrocketed, convincing the station bosses even more that Stu was right. He was allowed full musical control over his show and was completely self-produced. Allan produced a soul show called Bust This and had a house hour which would feature the latest house tracks coming out of Manchester and Chicago, and of course the seamless mixing he was known for. During this time, he championed early techno pioneers 808 State and even gave one of the group members, Gerald Simpson, the moniker which he later went by, a guy called Gerald. The name came from how Stu introduced Simpson on his show, and here is a guy called Gerald. The rest, as they say, is history. During his time at Piccadilly Radio, Stu Allan played an important role in promoting new and emerging genres of music, such as hip-hop, electro and house. He was one of the first DJs in the UK to play house music on commercial radio, and he's credited with helping to popularise the genre in the UK. He also played a key role in promoting the emerging hip-hop scene in Manchester and helped to bring the sound of the Bronx to the streets of the UK. At Key 103, Allan continued to push the boundaries of dance music and was one of the first DJs in the UK to play jungle and drum and bass on commercial radio. He also helped to popularise other genres of dance music, such as trance and techno, and became known for his eclectic and cutting-edge playlists. It was during his time at Key 103 that Stu also became involved in the UK rave scene and helped to organise some of the biggest rave events in the country. He was a regular DJ at events such as Dreamscape and Helter Skelter and played a key role in promoting the UK rave culture. He also continued to release music under his own name and under various aliases and became one of the most respected producers in the UK dance music scene. In the late 1990s, Stu worked for Kiss FM, one of the most influential dance music radio stations in the UK. At Kiss FM, he produced and mixed the now legendary Kiss Mix on a Monday to Saturday evenings. I also found that Stu hosted a show on Reading FM called Back to My Roots and played a lot of funk, disco and soul. Through the outlet of commercial radio, Stu played an important role in the development of the UK dance music scene, certainly while at Piccadilly, Key 103 or Kiss. He helped to promote new and emerging genres of music and was one of the first DJs in the UK to play house, jungle, drum and bass and UK garage on commercial radio. So Stu had made his way onto radio and the UK rave scene with huge success. But what came next was massive. Pete Pritchard had been around the music business for a few years by the early 90s and at a promo tour had met our Stu, and following that Stu had recorded a track in one of Pete's studios. I don't know which track and I don't know which studio, but I digress. Pete had set up the UK office and studio of the Italian house music label Media Records and was on the lookout for a DJ. One of the key elements of the Media Records ethos was to match a great DJ with a great producer, something that had been a winning formula for the label before. Remembering how well he got on with Stu, Pete got on the phone and asked if he wanted to work on a song for the newly formed Media UK. The pair got to work and quickly finished a track titled Holding On, featuring elements of rave, a pounding Eurotech kick and a catchy hook. The track was promoted by Eddie Gordon on the club circuit and went to #1 in the UK club charts. It didn't make top 40 in the singles chart though, peaking at 66 and spending just 1 week there. In the clubs, it was being promoted by DJs all over the UK and ended up selling a lot of copies on 12-inch. Neither of them saw what would happen next. Media Records Italy was enjoying huge worldwide success with Capella, an Italian dance act mainly known for their hits You Got to Know and You Got to Let the Music. At the time, these acts were exploding all over Europe, and the massive American label MCA had been struggling in the UK for hits. Using the Media Records connection and to gain access to the label, Pete made a deal with MCA for some of the Capella back catalogue. Following the success of Holding On, Pete and Stu spoke about trying for a second hit in a similar vein, or trying something more obvious, or even attempting a crossover. Everything was starting to come together as the pair released a couple of tracks trying to find the formula for writing a crossover between the mainstream and the club. The Rhythm and Keep the Fires Burning were released and licensed to MCA, which gained the pair some pretty decent big label promotion and marketing. They reached 28 and 36 in the UK singles chart respectively, and featured a host of vocalists including ODCMC, Georgia Lewis and Alison Williamson. In between the releases under Clock, Stu and Pete produced a remix of the theme from Beverly Hills Cop for MCA. It had a low-level release in Germany, but ultimately it inspired something extra in the duo. The idea was to make a track not too dissimilar from their debut, but with the melody of Axel F replacing the vocal hook. The final result had club chops, but was instantly recognisable. Not fully convinced it would translate, Stu debuted it at his regular Bowler's Rave in Manchester, and by the time the melody hit, 6,000 ravers went off. Now he was convinced. The club promos seemed to echo this, and MCA geared up for a hit record with huge marketing drives through retailers. It entered the chart at 13 and jumped to number 7 the following week, partially due to missing sales data from its debut week. Missing data or not, this was a huge milestone for the pair and the first massive success for the project. They immediately got Clock on the road, and for a long while before Axel F was released, Clock had been performing to thousands and thousands of punters all over the UK. This was also a time when dance music videos were becoming a major force in promoting to a younger crowd on terrestrial TV and MTV. The setup of the group had evolved to be reminiscent of other Euro pop dance acts of the time, with a female singer and an MC. This image for the band was perfect to attract the younger crowd that they were trying to seduce, and with the instant hit of Axel F and a now established look, the band had an opportunity. Axel F was released in early 1995, and by the end of the summer, Clock had recorded 3 top 10s and were releasing their debut album. Having established the Clock sound, Stu and Pete felt confident on repeating the formula. They now knew they were pop producers, not just dance, and that confidence allowed them to target both markets. They completed the lineup with Lorna Tinker Saunders as their singer and Marcus ODCMC Thomas as their rapper, and the act were out gigging 6 nights a week, regularly performing at under 18s discos to cement the youth vote. While trying to decide how to proceed following the success of Axel F, Stu suggested Whoomph, as he'd noticed that whenever the Miami bass version by Tag Team was played in Ibiza, somewhere Stu was pretty familiar with by now, everyone would bounce around and sing it, even singing it well after the song finished. They took the hook and inserted the Clock formula, and it sounded instantly like a hit. Stu and Pete took the song to Steve Wolf, their A&R guy at MCA. They were petrified and believed they would be laughed out of town. They were wrong, and in the end, all that Wolf said to them was, "That'll do," before leaving. It ended up being their biggest hit, entering the singles chart at number 4, behind U2, the Out Here Brothers and Robson and Jerome. Wanting to maintain the momentum, the group quickly put together Everybody, a return to the classic sung melody after Stu suggested a random hook from a classic 80s club record by Hamilton Bohannon. The record was another hit, as an instantly recognisable hook with the Clock sound. From what I read, there was a little bit of argy-bargy over the legalities of the sample that Stu and Pete used. It's all dealt with now, I'm sure, and let's face it, they were writing for MCA, a massive record label who tend to get things cleared up front and are not going to want people knocking the door for a payout. Towards the end of 1995, Clock put their heads together and, using that core sound created through the previous 3 releases, produced an original composition. In the House peaked at 23 in the UK singles chart, and their next track, Holding On For You, only hit the 27th spot. It was time to assess the situation and work out a way forward, and quickly, if they were to continue the success of 1995. A few bits to catch you up on before we get back to it. The DJ mixes are now going to be available on YouTube as well as Mixcloud. We're nearly at 1,000 subscribers now, which is amazing. If you've been lurking and haven't subscribed yet, do it this month, eh? Maybe there's something we can do when we get over that milestone. I don't know. Let us know in the comments what you think we should do to celebrate getting 1,000 subscribers. If it's something I can put together, then we'll celebrate together. Now all that's done, we can get back to this. It's fair to say that the group never did quite reproduce the same success in '95, but did continue to have pretty amazing success, with the next couple of years reflecting a more established and mature approach to making and selling music. Pete was on the case with marketing, and one of the ways he'd found success was by direct mailing the fan base with a postcard on release day. He'd heard that the very popular band Take That had used it to break through a barrier from UK radio and decided to borrow the idea. By gathering the names and addresses of the fans, data protection would have a field day with this, I'm sure. Clock would pretty much guarantee a top 20 track minimum, so long as it had the right elements. The fan base was countrywide, but far more skewed to the north of England. Around 40,000 postcards were sent out on release day, allowing them to push direct notifications to their fans without relying on whether the radio stations would promote them. In 1996, we saw a shift from the Euro techno-driven sound to one more disco-influenced, slower, and maintaining the MC in the mix. Pete had already known this was coming, as he'd had multiple conversations with MCA about it, and with Stu, had to decide if they could make the jump and make it work. Both Stu and Pete had a wide range of personal lives, and disco was not something they had any problems with, but it was a major move from Clock's roots. A publisher recommended Oh What a Night, a not very disco track that had a solid beat and a great piano sequence. Once they laid the track down, it made sense. Mostly, it completely transitioned the act from the club scene to the pop scene, even if it was the dance pop scene. They were never destined to be a bona fide smash hits pop act, just a solid, well-loved dance pop act. Oh What a Night set the tone for the second phase of Clock, which would be old disco tracks reworked with a rap and a 90s Clock production. This was a time when dance music as a whole was evolving, and a brand new genres such as trance were emerging from that early Euro sound. The big question is, once you've had a really decent, solid return to success, what is it you do next? Old disco tunes were being reworked all over the world, making it difficult to find the right track that hadn't already been made. An old favourite of Stu's was It's Over, a classic 80s R&B track from a British band called the Funk Masters. This track finally took the act back briefly into the top 10 and was the fourth and final track to do so. It didn't hang around there either and didn't sell like their other bigger hits. The next rework was of the 70s UK pop disco act Hot Chocolate's You Sexy Thing. After deciding to make the track, they embarked on getting the publishing cleared with a very famous old producer and publisher, Mickey Most, who was proving very difficult to locate. They managed to get hold of Mickey by telephone with his assistant in Hong Kong, but they never received a fax to confirm it. The next thing they knew, Warner Brothers were making a version of the song with Errol Brown, the original singer, on the chorus. A lot of legal wrangling ensued, and in the end it was agreed that the Warner track would be released first in June 97, and Clock would be cleared for theirs in October. As luck would have it, the Warner version tanked, and at the time that Clock were ready to release their version, the film The Full Monty was being released, with the original Hot Chocolate record featuring heavily in it. You Sexy Thing by Clock entered the chart at number 11, and like Oh What a Night spent some time hanging around the top 20s. It wasn't the smash hit they'd hoped for, but let's be real here, it was their 6th track to peak inside the top 13 of the UK singles chart. Clock had 2 more hits in That's the Way I Like It and Blame It on the Boogie. Both classic disco hits, reworked in the Clock style. Neither were massive hits, but certainly added to this impressive body of work. Around this time, ODCMC left the group and joined the Sounds of the Wickedness.
These are the sounds of the wickedness.
That's Zant, for those who don't remember that one. He was replaced by Shagun Peters, but the reality was that the ride was probably already over. The act continued to gig constantly, and Stu and Pete looked for a new way forward, but the world was changing musically again by this time, and their time in the limelight was slowly coming to an end. In 1999, disco still had an influence, but we were entering the more funky house era. There was the evolution of trance, but this was worlds apart from where Clock currently stood. They made the decision to make a funky house cover of Sunshine Day by Osibisa, but this ultimately failed and placed worst in the charts at 58 since their debut track Holding On. Clearly the magic had gone, as had the support from a big label. All the while that Stu was creating his own pop legacy, featuring on Top of the Pops and Live and Kicking, he still kept himself planted firmly in the rave scene. We've already seen that he trialled Axel F at Bowlers. He also created hardcore versions of other hits under his Visa moniker, with remixes known as the Visa Treatment. By the time Clock was over, we were heading into that late 90s decline in happy hardcore. Uninspiring releases within the genre resulted in Stu stepping back from the happy hardcore scene, instead focusing on other emerging genres such as UK garage and hard house. Then in 2005, as we started to see a more clubland raver baby type sound, Stu's interests were once again piqued by hardcore with its more polished, clubby sound. We saw him back promoting the genre on the radio through his Hardcore Nation show on Pure Dance, and mixed for a host of compilation series including Hardcore Nation and Hardcore Adrenaline. In his productions, he continued the ethos of the Clock era by employing singers rather than using samples. By 2012, Stu was broadcasting on Unity Radio in Manchester and hosted the Old School Nation show on a Sunday between 9 PM and 11. The show played classic old school tracks and quickly gained a loyal following among fans of the genre. In 2015, Allan became involved with a new online radio station called OSM Radio, which was launched by a group of like-minded individuals who shared a passion for old school and underground dance music. That's as much information as I can find on the question of who is OSM Radio, although I do have some suspicions about who might be involved. Stu Allan was one of the key figures associated with the station from its inception, and his involvement helped to bring attention to the station and its mission. OSN Radio features a range of shows that play classic tracks from the 80s and 90s, as well as newer tracks that are inspired by the old school sound. Stu took the Old School Nation name with him to OSN when he left Unity, and would take requests during the week to feature on his Friday night show. From 10 PM, he would host the after party, keeping those who were tuned in the party mood until midnight. Stu Allan's involvement with both Unity Radio and OSM Radio underscored his passion for old school dance music and his dedication to preserving and promoting it. On September 22nd, 2022, aged 60, Stu passed away. The tributes came from far and wide, with pop star Robbie Williams posting an old school set in tribute from a 14-year-old Rob. This year we've had the formation of the Stu Allan Foundation to continue to raise money for Stu's charities and the announcement of the Stu Allan Festival, with all proceeds also heading to the charities. Stu was a true pioneer of the northern rave scene and possibly even beyond. Dipping your toe that far into the pop rivers when you're headed from Rave Forest has had to have had some influence in both directions. His record collection made me drool. I'm being serious. Literally tens of thousands of vinyl, which, so I've heard, left no stone unturned when it came to soul, funk, electro, hip-hop, acid house, 90s rave, UK and European hardcore and club classics. I only know of this because of a few posts from Billy Bunter on Facebook, as he was the one who had the honour of cataloguing it all after Stu passed. Stu is one of the few I've seen live myself. Of course, being born in the northwest of England, Bowlers was on my doorstep, which is where I saw him. He inspired me since my early years. As an avid listener to Piccadilly on Key 103, and learning more about the man himself this month has shown me a picture of a genuine and down-to-earth bloke with an incredible talent for knowing what people want to hear and a legacy that will live on for years to come. Rest in peace, Stu. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Hardcore History. Before you say it, I'm gonna. I know, clock's not very hardcore, but it was a huge part of Stu's career and success, and to be fair, I enjoyed taking the trip down memory lane. Yes, I do have some clock in my collection. If you enjoyed this video and you're new here, welcome to our little corner of YouTube. I'd love it if you hung around for a bit, slap that subscribe and like button and go and have a nosy at some of the other videos I've posted. Ready for the details on next month? I guess I've kept you here long enough. Next time, I want to do another big name from the scene. It's time to look at vibes. I'm not a football fan, but I'm going to have to get my head in the game for that one, I think. Until then, my Stu Allan mix is over on Mixcloud and also now on YouTube. I'll drop links down in the description for those. If you want to have a chat with me, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Stuart-K Music over there. I'll leave that with you so I can grab a brew and start to harass people for information. Vibesy, I'm coming for you, and I'll see you then.